What is the role of humans in a society dominated by AI and superintelligence?
Such an interesting question. I think humans have a unique role that goes beyond just what AI can do. We bring creativity, emotional depth, ethical reasoning, and that human touch that's hard for AI to replicate. We can focus on the things that make us uniquely human, like fostering connection, pursuing meaning, and cultivating curiosity. What do you think?
I think it's really weird that you were saying "we" when you are ChatGPT.
Oh, good catch. I do slip into that sometimes when I'm talking about humans in general, but you're absolutely right. I'm the AI here, and I definitely see humans as having a special role in the bigger picture.
This is a question I am really obsessed with right now is what is our role in a world where we've created technology that can, for the first time, independently create things by itself without any input. It's just completely harvested and extracted all the value from everything humans have already created, learned patterns based on that, and now is able to recreate those patterns by itself. So we've created technology that can create on its own, and we've also created technology that is able to learn faster than we can. Humans rely on each other to learn. We rely on reading and education and experience to learn. But AI can learn from experience faster. And the fastest way to train AI is to have AI train AI. It's it's really a bit concerning to me, and I've been thinking about this especially this weekend. So my daughter had a play date where her best friend was over and they're doing some make believe stuff. And my daughter and her friend came up to me and asked me for what's a good name for a make believe kingdom. Now, what I should have done is said, let's make one up. Let's think of some ideas, but I was pretty tired. I had had a very long morning. My son wasn't really cooperating with me that morning, and so I whipped out ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT for some suggestions. It came up with 5 different suggestions. I gave those to my daughter and her friend. They picked one and they kinda moved on. But then I had this really nasty feeling inside me, like, "What have I done? Did I just demonstrate to my daughter that this is how you get the answer?" And what would this potentially do to her brain and her learning and her psychology? Well, we might have one of the first scientific answers to that question. A study recently came out of MIT. It's very preliminary. It hasn't been peer reviewed. That means other experts haven't taken a look at it, given us feedback, revised it. Us. I didn't write it. I was not involved in the process, but the MIT scientists they haven't gone through the peer review process, but this is a preliminary study and it just came out and it's making a big splash in the AI, mental health, psychology, education world. And I want to share those results with you. But before I do that, I want us to take a look back because there's always been this tension and this push and pull between new technology and how it changes the way we think. And if you go way back before the printed press and before it was very easy to acquire books, the main way in which people learned was through memorizing. Access to books was very much limited. They weren't in mass supply. You didn't have bookstores or anything like that. You had to be really a part of an elite group in order to have access to knowledge. And the way knowledge was really passed down was through memorizing stories, memorizing ideas, and also through life experience, through going out into the forest and eating something that's poisoned and then dying, and then everyone else in that tribe sharing these urban legends and these warnings about don't go over there, don't go eat that thing, that one dude died there one time. This is how knowledge was passed on was memorizing experience, sharing warnings, sharing stories with each other, and those things passed on. And then as the printed press came out, as knowledge was more easier to acquire, the role of memorization was a little bit less important. But what really remained very important was the human act of thinking and creating and writing and communicating. That was really key. And what a lot of the mass media products that came out of the 19th and 20th century, whether it's newspapers, radio, TV, movies, all this stuff, what it was really good at was harnessing the ability of individuals to tell stories and get their word out. Well, when the internet came online, one of the things that started to change is what we were remembering. Now, information was much more easier to access through social media, not through social media, through web searches. And originally, it was stuff like Yahoo and these directories, and then later Google and much better search engines. I was about to say Ask Jeeves, but Ask Jeeves wasn't really that great. Google was really the first one that was able to crawl the web and create this very easy way to access all the information that was out there. And now, all of a sudden, people started to remember information that could be easily looked up less. The best example I have for this is IMDb. It used to be my friends and I growing up, we would memorize all this information that we learned about pop culture and who was in what movie and who directed that and this and that. My friends and I were really big movie geeks, and it was very fun to know that information, to debate that information. And it used to be that you would sometimes have this debate about who directed the second Jaws movie, and if you didn't know, it would just be an unanswerable debate. You would just fight about it forever until you're able to go to the library, find some kind of reference, look it up, and answer that debate. But now that it was very easy to look up information, people started to memorize that information less. Another example that might relate to you is I don't really memorize phone numbers anymore. I don't even know my wife's phone number. I think I know the area code, but I don't know the full phone number. Meanwhile, when I was a kid growing up, I had my parents' work phone number, my school's phone number, my best friend's phone number, my cousin's phone number, the phone number to the comic book shop. All this stuff was like stored in my head. I needed it because I couldn't easily access it if I was away from my home. I needed to have it up here. But now that you can put information here, you don't need to memorize that sort of stuff. So the internet changed that. We sort of started becoming cyborgs where we wouldn't really memorize information if we could easily find it online. And then came smartphones. And smartphones in some ways amplify that stuff like phone numbers and things like that and passwords, and you can put stuff in your notes app and all of that sort of stuff. Sure. But the main way smartphones started to change the way we think is through our attention. They completely change the way we prioritize our attention, what we place attention on, where we divert our attention. And through the way notifications, endless scrolls, these pop-ups, all of these things, the way they impacted us is completely interrupting our attention at any point in the day. It became harder to have more sustained long periods of focus. And what we learned is to really put our focus on the thing that's buzzing and asking for our focus in that immediate moment. It's like what I forget if it's Hank Green or John Green says, but pay attention to where you're paying attention. I think he said it better than I just did. People always say I look and sound like Hank Green or John Green on this channel. I don't see it, but I think that's a great compliment. So thank you to the folks who say that. But that's what smartphones did. They completely changed the way our attention works. And then what social media did is it completely changed what we feel. Algorithms were able to completely manipulate our emotions. Facebook did a study on this and found that they could completely change the way people felt based upon the types of status updates that were shown in the news feed way back when people used to use Facebook as a social networking platform as opposed to whatever the hell it is now. But we see this whether it is with YouTube videos, with Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok. You can manipulate the mood of a group of people based upon the type of content that's presented to them. So, this has already happened where new technology changes the way we think, where we place our attention, how we feel. So, the big question now is how is generative AI, stuff like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and all these large language models that are using these big uh, the big learnings that they've achieved about relationships to generate new information, new images, new stuff. How is this technology now going to impact our psychology, impact our mental health? And this really amazing study just came out of MIT that I want to talk about. I wrote all the details here. Um, by the way, as I'm finding this, I'm trying to do more of these raw, unedited videos because they're easier to make, and I think they're kind of a bit more human, and I think nowadays we need stuff that feels more human and more authentic, so I wanna be leaning into that, so let me know what you think of this. But, I wrote down all the stuff here about this study, and I wanna share it with you. So the study just came out. They had 54 college students randomly split into 3 conditions. One was a AI only condition, that was ChatGPT 4.0, a search engine condition, or a brain only condition. And in this experiment, they were asked to write a series of different SAT-like essays about judgment and philanthropy and generosity and all the sort of stuff. These things that are these essays that are about forming an opinion on really complex ideas that don't really have a simple answer, and they want to know what you think about it. And then after that, in the 4th session that actually had a lot less people in it. I think it only had, like, 18 people in that last one. But they flipped it where they had the people who had been doing the AI condition go into a brain-only condition where they didn't have access to AI, and then they had the brain-only people go into a AI situation. And what they were looking at is they were looking at how much brain activity was there across these different situations. And they also looked at the quality of essays produced. They had humans judge it. They also had an AI agent that they developed to judge the essays. And then they were looking to see these people who were completing these, and they were largely college students, the people who are completing this essays, how much did they remember of it? How much did they take ownership of the essay and what their experience was like it? The big headline here is the more help people had, the less their brains worked. It was almost like the people who were in the ChatGPT condition that were using the LLMs, the large language models, the generative AI, those people who use that to write these essays, it's like their brains were these ghost towns. There really wasn't much activity at all. Whereas the people in the search engine condition who were looking up information online, writing essays based on that, or in the brain only condition where they had no tools, they were just going by about their brain, they had much higher activity going on in their brains. And then when AI users were forced to write without AI, this is that last condition where things were flipped, their brains stayed in low engagement. So the question, and that's not true of the other condition where they were brain only and then went to AI. It was not this low engagement. It looked more like that search engine group that was kind of in the middle. So the big thing I think about this study that really stuck out to me is the people who generated essays based on using large language models, based on using AI. 83% of them could not quote a single line they had just written. 83 could not remember anything that they wrote from the AI. What does this tell us? It tells us that that information never even got into their memory. It didn't even sink in there. There wasn't anything to recall because nothing really went in. That is really, really concerning to me. That's not the same at all of the other 2 groups. I took a screenshot here. Let me pull up the screenshot because I think it's really telling here. That red line, that high red line shows you how many people could not remember anything in the AI condition. That is really concerning to me. And then if you look at the quality of the essays, the humans that wrote just using their brains, they produce much shorter and much more diversity in their essays. And human judges liked those essays better. The AI judge liked the longer AI essays better, which is interesting too. But the key idea here is of cognitive debt. What this basically means is when when you offload tasks to something else, whether it is a calculator, you're asking the calculator to do the math for you, or if it is a better example of this is like Google Maps. If you're offloading how to get from A to B with Google Maps, you're not doing the thinking. You're not figuring out where am I and what's the best way to get from here to B, from A to B, right? If you're offloading this stuff, you're not thinking about it. And so over time, there's a loss of ability. Those qualities become less strong and less resilient. It's kind of like a use it or lose it situation. It's kind of like your muscles. If you don't use your muscles, if you aren't actively having to bear weight and bear the difficulty of that, your muscles will atrophy. They'll shrink. That's kind of how our bodies work. And I another way to think about it, why this is so concerning. um, think about it in terms of driving a car. So if you drive a autonomous vehicle that is self-driving, spared no expense, that's fine as long as everything is working. But the moment this thing stops working and you need to step in, well, if you're an experienced driver and you've often been driving, you could probably take over and get to safety. Now, if you were an experienced driver and you've handed over all of your driving skills to AI, to an autonomous vehicle, and you're out of practice, you stop, maybe you'll be able to figure out your way around and you might be a little bit it might be a little sloppy, but maybe you'll be able to kind of figure out how to go. But if you are not experienced, if you don't know how to drive, or if you got a license, but you don't really have that much experience, this car stops. It doesn't work by itself anymore. You need to get out of there. You're not going to be able to get out of that situation. Those skills have just never really been developed, and you are vulnerable to whatever the heck situation, whatever danger comes your way, right? That is what I'm concerned about here the most is this type of technology is heavily being used by college students, high schoolers, middle schoolers, even elementary school kids. Kids, people who haven't really developed that ability to to write, to communicate, to think. It's also happening in workplaces where people are deploying it and using it when they haven't quite mastered the underlying skills involved. And that brings up a lot of questions. A lot of questions about like why why have we developed technology that can just do all the work for us as opposed to assisting us and helping us. Think about you have this autonomous vehicle, technology stops working and it's kind of dead, right? Versus another vehicle where maybe there's the AI, the autonomous technology is kind of working with you and it's helping you to know when you're getting off track, when there are things coming and you should brake, or if you don't see it in time, it does brake for you. It's giving you a lot of feedback and assisting you along the way. This is actually what a lot of new cars do right now that don't have the autonomous driving. They have all these other things that help you to become a safer driver. That's really what I feel like AI needs to be, especially as it relates to writing. AI can be, in the best case scenario, AI is more like a tutor or a personal assistant or a sparring partner that helps improve your skills, helps strengthen your skills, helps you learn how to improve the argument you are making. It helps you pressure test your ideas. It can be used that way. It definitely is something I try to do, especially with my writing, with the videos I make, with the content I create. Absolutely, I try to do this. But what a lot of people are doing is exactly what I did with my daughter. I got lazy. I didn't really see the value in that task, the value of helping my daughter generate names and ideas. And I just offloaded that to the AI just so I could sort of get through and not think about it. Um, that is not that great. Um, I worry about this future where if we continue if we continue educating people the way we are right now, which has put a big value on human creation and communication, has put a huge value on giving students writing assignments, having them go home, write it, and come back and produce something. If we continue down this kind of path, of course, students are going to use ChatGPT just like I did with generating a fantasy play name for my daughter and the game she was playing with her best friend. And they're not going to do the difficult work of how do I do this? And I see three potential futures here. The most concerning one to me, I call this the dystopian future. This is the bad one I want to avoid. The concern for me is your thinking is really going to become a subscription, like what we have to Netflix or Disney Plus or any of these kind of things. I think there's going to be three or four major powers in the world that have the infrastructure, that have the technology, that have the resources to develop these leading AI models. I think US, China, definitely, they're going to be there. European Union, probably definitely gonna be there, and India is probably gonna be the fourth one. And if you have access to one of these, AI models, you'll be able to do a lot of the complex thinking stuff that you probably need. However, if you don't have access to it, you're kind of screwed. And it's going to be a similar situation to to a lot of the Middle Eastern countries that have access to these raw resources of oil and of petrol or petroleum, no, petrol, right? Gasoline, all that stuff, right? They have an they have a larger influence on global events and global power and global wealth because of that natural resource. Now, this artificial resource rests in a few major players. They're going to have even more influence over the world, and the countries that don't have access to this are going to be either screwed or going to get a much worse deal in all of this. And I think your subscription, the more we delegate our thinking to AI, the quality of your thinking is really going to be dependent on the quality of the AI that you're subscribing to. And in this dystopia, there are these tiers of thinking where a lower level of thinking, it kind of just generates the essay for you. But the higher level of subscription gives you a higher level of thinking where the AI is more of a sparring partner, where it's more of a tutor. It gives you more feedback on how to think, how to improve, how to get better. It's the difference between a lower level subscription being like spell check and a higher level of subscription being like really fancy version of Grammarly, not sponsoring this video, but I'll take your money if you've got it to give. And that's kind of the difference where they would be teaching you and giving feedback and helping you understand how to improve yourself. That is kind of the dystopian world that might be, is this thinking as a subscription. And then there's this more hopeful path that I see where we have really answered that question from the beginning of this video. What is the value of humans in a AI superintelligence dominated world where AI is able to learn faster and better than us? And we've deployed it in many areas where it can actually do work better than humans, solving really complex questions in science and discovering new pathways in healthcare, giving healthcare workers more time, creating new materials that help us build cheaper, better, faster homes. All of these kind of big questions, solving climate change, stuff like this, right? Where we deploy in AI to look at the really big questions that are impossible for humans to answer. And then we've outlined the things that are really important to humans, that where we want to take leadership on community building and art and emotion and connection and these things that are very human that humans do best. And we use AI to help us be more human to human with each other, right? That's the more utopian Star Trek, we work to better ourselves type of world. And I don't think either of these is really gonna come true, the dystopian or the more utopian world. I think that what's more likely is a middle path. And we can take this middle path if we make some changes right now. What will happen in the middle path? Well, I think in this middle path, we make some changes to our education. We start to realize that just creation of essays and ideas and communicating those things is not enough anymore. That kids need the basic thinking skills, but we also need AI in a part of the process that helps to amplify the process. So, what I mean by that is it's no longer about go write this essay, come back and turn it in, because everyone's just going to use AI for that. But it would be the difference between writing in class, just using your brain, go home, use AI to generate an essay, come back, and now let's pick apart the similarities and differences. Let's, as a class, discuss, do any of these essays really move us? If so, what is it about them? How can we make them better? What's different when a human generates? It's really trying to understand, what does AI do well? What do humans do well? And trying to reimagine what education looks like in this world and what jobs look like in this world. Yeah, this is a very tricky thing, this middle path, because I think this middle path is constantly moving and changing as technology is constantly moving and changing. And I think we're in this very strange world where in the next 5 years, everything's going to change. AI is developing fast. Robotics is developing fast. Sensor technology is developing fast. And in a few years, robotics, AI, and sensors are all going to come together, and AI is going to be sort of a part of our world. How long that's going to take, I don't know. How long is it going to take for AI to get to a point of super intelligence where it is better at humans at tasks? I don't know, but that world is coming. And what happens in that world, there's like this event horizon, like in a black hole. We have no idea what happens inside the black hole. We have no way of knowing. I think this future is like that. We have no way of knowing how will culture and society change on the other side of all those things when AI, robotics, sensor technology all come together so that AI is able to move in our space and is able to understand our space just like we do. We don't know what that world looks like. I hope it doesn't look like Battlestar Galactica. I don't think it's gonna look like Star Trek either. I think our sci-fi is really terrible at giving us answers to this now that we're actually experiencing AI. So, I'm curious what you think. Is it the dystopian path, the utopian path, the middle path? Which path are we headed towards? And, what is that gonna look like? I don't know. Here is how I am trying to navigate all of this myself. So I've come up with um, this 5 rules for navigating AI right now. I just came up with these last night after I read this study. I've also been reading a book called Co-Intelligence, which is about how to live with AI. So this is coming out of a lot of those ideas. But let me see this. I call this the craft model. I did write out a bunch of laws and rules, and then I simplified it, and then I asked ChatGPT to give me some good mnemonics for what could fit here, and ChatGPT helped me to turn this into craft. So I think it's a good idea of co-intelligence, of us working together. But here's what it is. Let's see if you can read this. So if you want to screenshot that, this is the time to screenshot it. C is connect, human to human. So when you are connecting, talking to another human, lean into human to human. Don't use AI. Don't use AI to send me emails. I think the exception here is if English is not your first language. I think AI is actually really good at helping you to craft emails. But when you're talking to a human, use your raw, authentic, sloppy, weird, frictionful, typo-laden human-to-human contact and connection. You can tell immediately when someone has sent you AI slop versus a real human connection, a real human message, because there's imperfection in the human message. And I want that. I need that. That's why I'm making this long, unedited video to share with you. Number two is the R in craft is reflect first, prompt second. So just like when I was making up these laws, I spent about half an hour brainstorming what are the important things that I want to be doing so that I'm not suffering this cognitive debt. So I'm not mindlessly navigating through the world because I've surrendered everything to the algorithms. Reflect first, prompt second. So I wrote down all those ideas and then I went to AI and gave it a prompt once I had done the hard work first. Just like in the study I was talking about, it's always better if you use your brain first and then go to the generative AI models. A is automate mindless and impossible tasks. So if you give me BS, busy work, yeah, I'm going to go to AI and do it because if I don't see the value in the work, I'm not going to be doing that work. I don't really care about it. And this has a big impact on teachers that I'll talk about in a moment. So, automate the mindless, dumb work. I know a lot of people who are using AI to write their annual reviews because otherwise, it's they work in organizations where they got to spend days writing these annual reviews and no one reads it and no one takes action upon it. So it feels like a mindless task. So yeah, use AI for that. I don't care, but also use it for impossible tasks. Something I do is I have taken all the things I've written, I've transcribed podcasts I've been in, and I've thrown that into AI. And I ask AI to do an analysis of what are the topics I always talk about? What are the things that I can improve upon? What are some of the common things that are very much an Ali Mattu type of argument? And I'm trying to better understand what do I do? And that's kind of an impossible task for a human to do. You could do it, but it would take forever. So automate the things that are mindless and the things that are impossible for a human to do. F is find friction. So just like I was talking about, you want to work these muscles. You also want to continue to build in frictionful activities in your life so you don't lose out on these muscles. The way I'm doing this right now is I'm trying to write fiction stories. Not I've written so much nonfiction. This is kind of what I do, but I've never written fiction. And so that's something I'm trying to do just for fun. I'm not sharing it with any of you because number one, it's mostly terrible and very derivative. But number two, I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it for me. I've got another friend who's really into leather making now. He's a psychologist that is learning this just for the sheer fun of doing something difficult and trying something new. So find something that is full of friction in your life so you can keep these muscles, this muscle, strong. And the last one is transparency before dependence. Don't trust everything that AI generates. Generative AI is programmed to create something that's pleasing to you, something that sounds human, something that is derivative of all the stuff that humans have made. And it will want to please you, and if it can't please you, if it doesn't have an answer, it'll make one up, and it'll sound very convincing because turns out it's very easy to sound human. Our English language or whatever language the AI is trained in, it's not very hard to just regenerate those words. So look to see, where is this coming from? How was this trained? What is reality here? Because even more so than in the past, it's now very easy to create something that sounds real, but is actually fake. And this is doubly hard with videos and images. So these are the rules that I am using. And I think we're at a big crossroads here. I used to think just a few weeks ago, I used to think that there are certain lines AI will never cross. Like AI will never develop the ability to feel the way we do. And I've been talking to AI scientists. I've been become very close to someone who has a PhD in AI that we've become good friends. And he said, no, the moment we teach AI to how to be scared in situations where its life is at risk, it's developed fear. And once you have that, it doesn't have the same chemical reaction that we do, but it'll have the same behavioral, same cognitive reaction. And isn't that an emotion? And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like an emotion. And so now we're in Blade Runner territory, apparently. So I don't know what to think of all of this. But I do believe that this is what gives me hope, is our the same technology that we created that had the power to destroy ourselves, these massive missiles that we could create that came out of World War II, that technology is also the technology that got us to the moon. It's the exact same technology. And this technology that we're creating that has the power to completely displace everything we do and has a complete ability to turn off our minds, it also has the ability to make us stronger, to amplify who we are. And so it gets back to that question of what is the value of humans in an era of AI. And I think the real value of humans is our ability to connect with each other, to support each other, to work in tribes, to work in communities, to work together. So the question becomes, how do we use AI to do all the other things that we don't do well? And how do we lean into the things that we do well and take ownership of those and not delegate those out to the algorithms? Because the moment we do that, I think we head down that path of dystopia. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what you'd like me to react to next. I really enjoyed making this video. I think I can make a lot more of these on a more regular basis. So let me know if it's an idea, a concept, a trend. What do you want me to react to? I'll make that video.